What if one battle could change the course of history for an entire continent? In the late 19th century, as European powers aggressively expanded their empires, one African nation stood defiant against colonial rule and emerged victorious. The Battle of Adwa, fought on March 1, 1896, was a momentous event that shook the world, marking Ethiopia as the only African nation to successfully resist colonization during the scramble for Africa. This remarkable victory was not just a military triumph, it was a symbol of resilience, unity, and determination that inspired future anti-colonial movements across Africa. Unlike other African nations that were overwhelmed by superior European firepower, Ethiopia defied the odds and stood its ground against one of the world's growing colonial empires. But how did Ethiopia achieve this victory? What made Emperor Menelik II and his army so formidable? And why does this battle still hold significance over a century later? To understand the full impact of Adwa, we must go back and examine the key events leading up to the battle and the decisive strategies that led Ethiopia to victory. The road to Adwa. Ethiopia, one of the oldest civilizations in the world, had long been a beacon of African independence. Unlike much of the continent, which was under colonial rule by the late 19th century, Ethiopia maintained its sovereignty. This was largely due to the strength of its rulers, the strategic geography of its mountainous terrain, and its history of military resistance against foreign invaders. Ethiopia had successfully fended off external threats for centuries, from ancient times through the medieval period, reinforcing its reputation as a fiercely independent nation. During the late 19th century, Ethiopia was a powerful but fragmented empire composed of different regions ruled by local chieftains and kings. These regional rulers often had their own militias and political ambitions, making national unity a constant challenge. Emperor Johannes IV had ruled Ethiopia until his death in 1889, after which Menelik I rose to power. Unlike many African rulers at the time, Menelik was not naive about European ambitions. He was highly strategic, understanding that in order to protect Ethiopia from colonization, he needed to modernize its military, build diplomatic alliances, and unite the nation under a single strong leadership. Menelik's leadership was instrumental in preparing Ethiopia for the coming conflict. Recognizing the growing threat of European imperialism, he sought to equip his army with the best available weaponry. He secured advanced firearms, artillery, and ammunition by leveraging European rivalries, playing France, Britain, and Russia against each other to acquire military supplies. This tactical diplomacy ensured that Ethiopia was not entirely outmatched in terms of weaponry, giving it an edge that many other African nations lacked when facing European invaders. But military strength alone was not enough. Menelik understood that unity was just as important as firepower. He worked tirelessly to bring Ethiopia's diverse ethnic and regional groups together under a common cause, defending their homeland from foreign domination. His wife, Empress Taytu Betul, played a crucial role in rallying support among the nobility and common people alike. She was a formidable leader in her own right, organizing resistance efforts and ensuring supplies for the army. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church also played a significant role, framing the coming war as not just a battle for land, but a struggle to preserve Ethiopia's faith and cultural identity. By the early 1890s, Ethiopia had positioned itself as a well-prepared and determined force, ready to defend its sovereignty at all costs. However, the key event that directly led to war was the signing of a controversial treaty with Italy, a treaty that would soon spark an armed conflict that would change the course of African history. The Treaty of Wachale. In 1889, Menelik II signed the Treaty of Wachale with Italy, an agreement that was intended to define diplomatic and economic relations between the two nations. At the time, Menelik saw the treaty as a means to secure military support and recognition of his rule while maintaining Ethiopia's sovereignty. However, a crucial discrepancy between the Amperic and Italian versions of the treaty led to a major diplomatic crisis that would soon escalate into full-scale war. The Italian version of the treaty contained a clause that stated Ethiopia had agreed to become an Italian protectorate, effectively placing the nation under Italian control, particularly in matters of foreign policy. This meant that Ethiopia would not be able to engage with other nations independently, and all diplomatic affairs would be handled through Rome. In contrast, the Empiric version of the treaty merely suggested that Ethiopia could choose to use Italy as an intermediary in its foreign relations, but was not required to do so. This manipulation was a deliberate attempt by Italy to expand its colonial empire in Africa, taking advantage of the growing presence of European powers on the continent. Italy, which had only recently unified as a nation in 1861, was eager to establish itself as a global colonial power like Britain and France. The prospect of controlling Ethiopia, one of the last remaining independent African kingdoms, was seen as a vital step toward achieving this goal. When Menelik discovered the deception, he was outraged. He immediately rejected Italy's interpretation of the treaty and, in 1893, officially repudiated the agreement, declaring Ethiopia's absolute independence. Menelik understood that allowing Italy to claim Ethiopia as a protectorate would mean the end of his nation's sovereignty and centuries of self-rule. He not only nullified the treaty, but also began preparing Ethiopia for an inevitable conflict, knowing that Italy would not accept his decision without resistance. Italy, unwilling to let Ethiopia slip from its grasp so easily, responded with growing aggression. Italian forces stationed in Eritrea, which had been established as an Italian colony in 1890, began preparing for war. Italian officials and military leaders underestimated Ethiopia's strength, believing that a modern European army could easily overpower an African force. Confident in their superiority, they planned an invasion that would bring Ethiopia under their full control, setting the stage for one of the most significant battles in African history. Italy's underestimation. Like many European colonial powers, Italy severely underestimated Ethiopia's military capabilities. Italian forces, under General Oreste Baratieri, believed they could quickly overpower Menelik's army, assuming that Ethiopia's lack of industrialization would render it defenseless against modern European firepower. However, several critical factors worked in Ethiopia's favor. A well-armed military. Menelik had spent years stockpiling modern weapons, acquiring rifles, artillery, and ammunition from European suppliers. Mass mobilization. Menelik called upon his people to defend their nation. Over 100,000 Ethiopian warriors from different ethnic groups, including Amhara, Oromo, Tigrayan, and Garaj, answered the call, demonstrating an unprecedented level of national unity. Strategic use of terrain. Ethiopia's rugged, mountainous landscape posed a significant challenge for the Italians, who were unfamiliar with the terrain. Ethiopian forces, however, used the geography to their advantage, planning ambushes and setting up strategic high-ground positions. Italian strategic errors. The Italian army faced logistical problems, communication breakdowns, and supply shortages. They also miscalculated Ethiopia's strength, believing their 14,500 troops could handle Menelik's much larger force. By early 1896, the stage was set for one of the most decisive battles in African history. Battle of Adwa. On March 1, 1896, the Italian forces, numbering around 17,000 troops, advanced toward Adwa, confident in their superior weaponry and European military strategies. Expecting a swift and decisive victory, Italian commanders believed the Ethiopian forces would be disorganized and easily crushed. However, they had vastly underestimated Menelik II's leadership, the resilience of Ethiopian warriors, and the treacherous nature of the mountainous battlefield they had entered. Menelik and his generals, including his formidable wife, Empress Taytu Betul, as well as Ras Alula, Ras Makanan, and Ras Makal, had meticulously planned their counterattack. They had assembled a massive army of over 100,000 fighters, composed of warriors from all across Ethiopia, united under a single purpose, to defend their homeland from foreign domination. Equipped with modern rifles, swords, and traditional spears, they positioned themselves strategically in the rugged terrain, using their deep knowledge of the land to their advantage. As the Italian forces marched through the steep valleys and rocky passes, Ethiopian troops suddenly launched a coordinated multi-front assault. Thousands of warriors stormed the enemy positions from multiple directions, catching the Italians off guard. The battle quickly descended into brutal, close-range combat, with Ethiopian fighters overwhelming the Italians, who struggled to maintain their formations in the chaos. The Italians, disoriented and outmaneuvered, were unable to regroup effectively. Their reliance on outdated maps and poor intelligence led them into vulnerable positions, making them easy targets for Ethiopian sharpshooters and cavalry charges. The sheer force and determination of the Ethiopian warriors shattered Italian morale. Officers attempted to rally their troops, but as casualties mounted and their lines collapsed, panic spread through the ranks. By midday, it was clear that the Italian invasion had turned into a disaster. Soldiers began to retreat in confusion, only to be pursued relentlessly by Ethiopian fighters. Many attempted to flee, discarding their weapons in desperation, while others were captured in the thousands. The battlefield was littered with the dead and wounded. By the time the fighting ended, over 6,000 Italian soldiers lay dead, with thousands more taken prisoner. Ethiopia also suffered heavy casualties, with estimates of around 5,000 dead, but the victory was total and decisive. The Battle of Adwa was not just a military triumph, it was a defining moment in African history. It shattered the myth of European invincibility and ensured Ethiopia's place as one of the only African nations to successfully resist colonization. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the world, inspiring other anti-colonial movements and forcing European powers to recognize Ethiopia as a sovereign state. The aftermath. The Battle of Adwa was not just a military victory, it was a political earthquake. Italy, humiliated by its defeat, was forced to sign the Treaty of Addis Ababa in October 1896, officially recognizing Ethiopia's sovereignty. This was a rare moment in history when a non-European nation successfully resisted European colonial rule. The impact of Adwa extended far beyond Ethiopia. Across Africa and the African diaspora, Ethiopia became a symbol of Black resilience and independence. African Americans, Caribbean intellectuals, and anti-colonial activists in Africa saw Ethiopia as proof that colonial rule could be challenged. Figures like Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois frequently referenced Adwa in their calls for Black pride and unity. The battle also played a significant role in inspiring future liberation movements across Africa in the 20th century. Commemorating Adwa. Today, the Battle of Adwa is celebrated annually in Ethiopia on March 2 as Adwa Victory Day, a national holiday that honors the courage and sacrifice of those who fought for the country's independence. Across Ethiopia, ceremonies, parades, and cultural events commemorate this historic triumph, reminding the nation of its proud legacy of resistance against colonial rule. In Addis Ababa, the Adwa Victory Memorial stands as a powerful tribute to the warriors who defied the odds and safeguarded Ethiopia's sovereignty. The monument serves as both a historical landmark and a source of inspiration, drawing visitors who come to pay their respects to the heroes of 1896. For Ethiopians, Adwa is more than just a military victory. It is a defining moment in their national identity. The battle symbolizes unity, resilience, and unwavering determination in the face of adversity. It stands as a testament to the sacrifices made to preserve Ethiopia's freedom and continues to inspire future generations to stand strong against oppression and external threats. Beyond Ethiopia, the victory at Adwa holds significance for Africa and the wider world. It shattered the myth of European invincibility and served as a beacon of hope for other nations resisting colonialism. To this day, Adwa remains a powerful symbol of African strength, self-determination, and the enduring spirit of independence. Unforgettable legacy of Adwa. The Battle of Adwa was a turning point in world history. Ethiopia's triumph against Italy proved that African nations were capable of resisting colonial domination. This victory shattered the myth of European invincibility and gave hope to those fighting against imperial rule. Even today, Adwa remains a powerful reminder that unity, strategy, and determination can overcome even the most formidable enemies. The legacy of Adwa lives on, inspiring millions around the world. If you found this story inspiring and want to learn more about important moments in history, make sure to subscribe for more fascinating insights.